Good morning, everyone. Good Monday. Happy Monday. I don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't sleep much this weekend, and that has a lot to do with the Toronto Blue Jays, but also horror movies. Watching lots of horror movies. Too many horror movies, perhaps. But that is not the point of today's live stream. Today, it is, of course, the Monday edition of the Morning Movie Show. So, we are going to be talking about a lot of fun things, chief among them, Venom being a very good boy and performing at a very good level. That's right, Rocco. Everyone here is excited about Venom. There's also, of course, going to be some other industry news. We will see where it takes us, where it leads us to. Perhaps a bit of a lighter show today, simply because it is Monday morning and I am feeling a little tired. I am drinking my caffeine supplement as opposed to the typical tea. So thank you, Coca-Cola, for sponsoring this episode. Just kidding. They don't know who I am. So, pleasantries out of the way. It's time that we start talking about some of the film news. And yes, I will be getting to the Venom 2 box office news as well as just a lot of other box office news because the box office did pretty well this weekend. I would say the most exceptional weekend we've had in a very long time at the box office. But first, because this is a pro-labor show, we must start off with very labor-specific things. And I think everything's going okay. Yeah, I think the stream's okay. I thought maybe the stream was doing something weird, but it is not. Everything is fine. So, first of all, last week I talked a little bit about how a letter had been signed by about 100 federal Democrats in the United States and had been sent into, I believe, the AMPTP, and that letter expressed solidarity with the IATSE union, and that was the first sign we really had of political pressure that was mounting on the AMPTP to actually cut a deal with IATSE and meet IATSE's demands, specifically things like working proper hours and not being worked to death on these feature films and television shows that we all love so dearly. And now it seems that political pressure has increased. It's gone up. So let's just take a little quick look at this. And this is also kind of important. This came out thanks to David Robb over at Deadline, and it was published in the evening of Friday. So this is going a little bit further back. And the main reason I wanted to bring this up, aside from just being a pro union show, being a pro union person, is that the strike authorization votes for IATSE went from October 1st to 3rd, and we will be getting the results of that strike vote around 11 a.m. today. Now, I'm pretty sure that's 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so we will not be on the air when that happens, but I still just wanted to give you guys your daily dose of labor news. Also, hello, Dory. Thank you for joining us on this Monday morning. Always good to see you. So, thank you to David Robb at Deadline. Let's get into this a little bit more. Political pressure is mounting on the AMPTP to negotiate a fair deal with IATSE. In the past 2 days, more than 200 state and federal Democratic lawmakers have signed letters to the AMPTP President Carol Lombardini, urging her to bargain fairly and avert a labor stoppage during the pandemic. The union's members began voting for strike authorization on Friday, and results will be announced on Monday. So just to be clear, the last time we talked about this, it was about 100 federal Democrats, and now it appears that there are even more state-level Democrats joining in on this for a total of 200. Just a second. I think Rocco's trying to bite something. Rocco, get out of here. The cables are not your chew toys. Damn it, cat. If you have cats who chew cables, get at me in the chat so we can commiserate. Yeah, you're so innocent, aren't you? 50 state senators and assembly members, including the legislature's top leaders, sent Lombardini a letter today urging the AMPTP to negotiate collaboratively and in good faith with the union. Signers included State Senate Pro Tempore Tan Atkins, Speaker Anthony Rendon, Senate Labor Committee Chair David Courtier, Assembly Labor Committee Chair Ash Kalra, Senator Maria Elena Durazo, and Assemblymember Autumn Brooke. The AMPTP's unwillingness, and this is a quote, to reasonably or responsibly respond to these and other important issues have reportedly created a deadlock and compelled IATSE to call a nationwide strike authorization vote on October 1st, the legislators wrote. A strike would dramatically disrupt the industry, the economy, and the communities we represent. We are hopeful that both sides can negotiate in good faith and reach a consensus agreement, which necessitates both parties continuing to participate in ongoing negotiations. It's interesting here how they are specifically pointing out or calling out both the AMPTP and the union. So this is not explicitly a pro-union letter, but it is directed at the AMPTP. So it's a slight difference in language compared to what the federal Democrats sent through in their letter. The key issues, and this is to continue the quote, the letter. The key issues in this negotiation, as we've come to understand them, are about worker dignity and basic human necessities. We are unified in our belief in the importance of living wages, sustainable benefits, and reasonable rest periods between shifts and during the workday, the letter says. We ask that the AMPTP negotiate collaboratively with these workers to reach a fair contract and address the basic human needs that will allow them to do their jobs safely and with dignity. And in that case, this letter is very much unchanged from what the federal Democrats sent through, basically saying the same thing. These union members deserve things like living wages and sustainable benefits and rest periods between shifts and during shifts. I've said on this channel before, I used to work on set on both union gigs and non-union gigs, and if you're working 12 hours a day and you're not being given adequate time to rest and you're not being given adequate time to sleep so you can return to work the next day feeling refreshed, then it is dangerous. It creates a dangerous work environment. And when you are constantly grinding, when you are constantly having to do and work those kinds of long hours, it becomes increasingly dangerous the more often you have to do things like this. So I'm hoping, really hoping, that the strike authorization goes through. I don't want to see a strike, but I want IATSE to get what they want. And if a strike is needed to do that, then good. Then we'll strike. Also, just to point out that I was doing a bit of extra reading this morning, and by extra reading I mean I was just checking my Twitter account, and I did see some mention that the degree to which IATSE vote in favor of the strike, as in the percentage of yes votes that they get, will directly influence their negotiating power. So I believe that in order for the strike authorization to go through, each local must reach 75% of a yes vote, and then it's an electoral college type thing. So I believe there's 13 locals in California. So 7 out of those 13 must vote yes in order for the strike authorization to go through. So if it is like a very razor thin margin and only 7 of the locals get to 75% yes votes, then that isn't really a very strong negotiating position for them. Whereas if all 13 of the locals get to say like 90 or 95% strike authorization vote, then that is a much more that is a number that will allow them to negotiate and give them a much better negotiating position. So that's good. So hopefully they get a very large number. So then moving on from one potential labor stoppage to another potential labor stoppage that will be coming next year. So the Directors Guild of America, who have supported IATSE in their strike stance, are gearing up for a 2023 contract talks, and they've named their negotiating committee. And if you're just joining us, I will be getting to the Venom news shortly. I just wanted to get some of this industry stuff out of the way first, because it is important to me that we all keep up to date on what's going on with the labor unions in America, in the American film industry. So the DGO, and this is coming from David Robb, once again, he must be their union person. And this came out on Friday from Deadline. The DGA's current film and TV pack doesn't expire until June 30th, 2023, but the guild is already gearing up for those contract negotiations. Director John Avnet has been named chair of the negotiating committee, and directors Karen Gaviola and Todd Holland have been named co-chairs. The DGA National Board unanimously approved their appointments. DGA National Executive Director Russell Hollander will be the guild's chief negotiator. And then there's going to be some quotes in here. I'm hoping more for this article to have some information about what the DGA specifically will be asking for. So it says here, this is just at the very end of the article, the guild said it expects to appoint its full negotiations committee made up of directors, assistant directors, unit production managers, associate directors, and stage managers working in all genres later this year. So it appears that we are still a little bit too far out from the DGA negotiations to actually have a good understanding as to what they're going to be asking for in these negotiations. I imagine that what we see happen in the IATSE negotiations after their strike authorization vote results become public, I imagine that what IATSE is able to get will also be sought for by the DGA, because a number of the people here that they've listed at the bottom as being a part of negotiating committees, including like assistant directors, associate directors, stage managers, etc. A lot of these are on set positions, especially assistant directors. First and third assistant directors, especially, they are definitely on set people. And even people like second assistant directors, they are on site usually. Like they're working the same hours as everyone else. So I would expect that the DGA will be pushing for whatever IATSE is able to get, which is once again why the IATSE strike is so important and why so many of the film-related guilds and unions are supporting IATSE in their strike movement. Oh, pardon me. See, the problem with drinking Coke Zero in the morning instead of tea is that it just makes me gassier. Just makes me a little gassier. Oh, but the uplift that caffeine is giving me. Whew, happy Monday morning, everybody. All right. To fulfill the promise of the thumbnail, let's talk about Venom being a very good boy and doing very good at the box office. This report comes to us from Variety, written by Rebecca Rubin. And this was published, I believe, yesterday morning. Brent asked me, why did I choose Coke Zero instead of tea? Because I'm tired as shit. And I didn't feel like brewing tea this morning, and I feel like this would be better somehow. So, Venom. Venom did a good job this weekend. Initially, when we were talking about Venom and its potential box office last week, we were looking at the Thursday preview numbers, where I believe it grossed about $11 million in North America. And using my big boy movie brain, I figured that probably meant it would get around 70 to 75 million at the box office. The assumption being that if in Thursday previews it's showing in half of available screens typically, then the Friday, Saturday, Sunday would mean it would probably double that for those 3 days, which gets us to about $70 million. But that was in fact incorrect. I did not do a very good job. I was off by a lot of money. And it looks like the Venom sequel has debuted to a monstrous, to quote Variety, $90 million, setting a pandemic record. So let us all just say this loud and proud. Venom 2 saved the movies. It wasn't Fast and the Furious. It wasn't Shang-Chi. It wasn't Black Widow. It was a 90-minute movie about a couple of boys who fall in love with each other. It's amazing. It's amazing the world that we live in. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's get into this article a little bit, because I'm sure there's going to be some more information in here that we can talk about. And also, let's just bask in the glory of Venom. Venom, Let There Be Carnage roared to a $90.1 million debut in its debut, setting a new pandemic record. It's an impressive result, one that provides a lifeline to struggling movie theaters and once again proves Marvel's might at the box office. Proves Sony's might at the box office. I mean, and also Marvel. The much darker Venom follow-up comes from Sony Pictures and is separate from Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, which recently delivered Shang-Chi and Black Widow, the two highest-grossing films of the year at the domestic box office. If its first 3 days in theaters are any indication, Venom: Let There Be Carnage is on track to join those blockbusters as 2021's biggest earners. The film is playing only in cinemas as opposed to being available in a hybrid release on demand model, a factor that should help ticket sales. The thing that probably will work against it, however, is that we are moving into a very packed October. No Time to Die is coming out in North America this weekend. You then have Halloween Kills coming out the weekend after, and then Dune coming out the weekend after that. And then the weekend after that is Last Night in Soho, which is Edgar Wright's new film. Plus, there's just a bunch of other stuff coming out from the festival circuits, and there might be one other large film I'm thinking about. I think actually The French Dispatch comes out on the 22nd, competing against Dune. So there is going to be a lot of options this October. So Venom obviously had a very good opening weekend, and it will have its own time in North America until Thursday when No Time to Die starts. And in fact, I think there's No Time to Die preview starting as early as Wednesday. But that's very, very limited. Like, I think one screen in all of Toronto is showing No Time to Die on Wednesday. So it's much more limited. But Venom, I think, will have a harder time getting up to the revenue amounts of Shang-Chi and Black Widow because of that. Because those films were not competing against anything. Black Widow especially. In fact, Black Widow was really only competing against itself on demand. And so I think Venom will have trouble getting up that high. But let's continue on with the article. I don't even know what that sound was. We've got here a quote from Sony. We don't really need to worry about that. This I thought was interesting. Overseas, Venom: Let There Be Carnage opened in Russia with 13.8 million. The film will bow in Latin America next week before landing in most major international markets. This is another quote about the Russia stuff. It reaffirms the importance of the theatrical window, says Sony's president of domestic distribution, Adrian Smith. Adds Sanford Panich, president of Sony Pictures Entertainment Motion Picture Group. Man, I think maybe too many people work for Sony. We knew we had a really big movie and an excited fan base. The marketplace comes out of the right movie. The supervillain sequel, starring Tom Hardy as the otherworldly lethal protector, blew past the pandemic-era benchmark set back in July by Black Widow, which opened to 80 million in theaters. The Scarlett Johansson vehicle made an additional 60 million in its inaugural weekend on Disney Plus, where it was available to purchase on the same day as its theatrical debut. Next to those, Shang-Chi at $75 million and Universal's Fast and the Furious sequel, F9, which debuted at $70 million, have landed the biggest pandemic opening weekends, with younger males fueling ticket sales. Venom 2 continued that trend. 62% of ticket buyers were male and 55% were under the age of 25. I'm only one of those things. Then we get some more information, some more quotes about the demographics. To continue the praise, making inaugural ticket sales for Venom: Let There Be Carnage even more impressive, it had a bigger opening weekend than its predecessor, 2018's Venom. The first comic book adventure with Hardy at the helm opened to $80 million in an era before the devastating global health crisis upended moviegoing. Despite terrible reviews, the original became a box office juggernaut and grossed $213 million in North America and $856 million globally. Venom was particularly huge in China, where the 2018 movie collected $269 million. And I'm not sure if Venom 2 is going to be going to China. Yeah, it says here the sequel doesn't have a release date in China yet, but there was nothing in the film that made me think that China wouldn't like it. Like, there wasn't anything explicitly that China wasn't into. I mean, except for the fact that they kind of lean into Venom being gay, because he actually has like a coming out moment. So maybe China doesn't like that part. Considering they couldn't handle like two women kissing for a couple of frames in Rise of Skywalker, that could be a problem. But it would be interesting. I feel like with like a very small tweak of the dialogue, they could probably do it. Or maybe, just maybe, China shouldn't be so fucking stupid about LGBTQ stuff and just have people be gay in movies. It's totally fine, China. People can be gay in movies. If anyone wonders why I disappear in a couple of days, it's because I just said that. Uh, Not because it's my birthday and I'm just going crazy. Da, da, da. So to continue here, the sequel doesn't have a release date yet in China, a market that will be crucial to the success of the $110 million budgeted film. That's actually insane to me. The fact that Venom had a $110 million budget, something about these larger blockbusters these days, with the exception of Dune, based on what I've seen, I never, it doesn't, I, the money doesn't end up on screen. And I think the main reason for this is that, and this is maybe something that a lot of people don't realize about movie making in general, is that most of your budget goes to pay wages, whether that be actor wages or paying the wages of CGI artists or grips and gaffers, camera people on set. A large majority of your budget goes to just physical labor. And I think what we're seeing with a lot of these major blockbusters is that the top of the line, like name, Tom Hardy in this case, is just getting paid so much money to do this. And then Woody Harrelson is probably taking a pretty decent paycheck as well. So that's just going up. And like easily half of the budget for this film could be just the actors and actresses in the film. And then what do you have left over for, set deck and CGI and things like this? When I watched Venom on Friday, I did not think to myself coming out of it, oh wow, they definitely spent $110 million on this. Brent asking, what about securing film locations in terms of how that affects the budget? For a film like Venom, I don't think that's much of an issue, considering they probably just built everything in a studio. There are some exterior shots of San Francisco that they might have had to get, but I don't remember anything in the film being specifically like. There's maybe one or two exteriors in Venom 2 where it looked like they were actually outside. I think a lot of the film was shot in studio, and that's true of a lot of blockbusters. It's actually one of the reasons why the press for the upcoming Eternals film has been focusing largely on Chloe Zhao and how she like insisted that they use real locations. So yeah. Oh, you just mean in general filmmaking? Honestly, location fees are typically not that bad. Um, they can get really high depending on the location you're needing. Like if you need to rent out like a $4 million house for, a 4 or 5 week shoot, yeah, it's gonna cost you. It's gonna cost you quite a bit. Um, but in other cases, like, if you're doing a more low budget film, you can figure stuff out. You can maybe I think actually working on a film a long time ago, like in 2009. This is just a personal anecdote, but it's kind of endemic of what I think happens out there in the world of filmmaking. We didn't really have a lot of money to pay for a specific location, but we did have a budget for things like paint and whatnot. So I think an agreement was reached where we didn't pay them what they normally get for using that location, but we also offered to just paint their walls for them because we had an entire crew of people who did stuff like that. And so that was how we came to an agreement on it. So, and the budget on that film was like $1.2 million ish. So that's, kind of an example of how things can go. It's not necessarily money. Sometimes it just comes down to like people hours. But yeah, I'm sure there are some budgets out there, some example budgets that you'd be able to look at. But obviously, yeah, it's also going to change depending on where you're shooting and how many different locations you actually need. But still, the actual biggest line item for any production is going to be the labor involved, both actor and otherwise. And it's probably into the 70% range, if not a little bit higher. So we have someone in the chat who I don't recognize. The weird one slinging sharpshooter. Saying, I like Venom 2 a lot, but the post credit scene though, with those big eyes and surprise. I won't talk about that quite yet because it is very spoilery, and I don't know how many people have actually seen Venom 2. I know, Dory, you have, but there may be other people who see this eventually, and they might not want Venom 2 to be spoiled for them. But we can get into that. I'll just put like a spoiler warning, a verbal spoiler warning up. Um, and then I think going back to this article about Venom 2's box office, talked about other films that were in contention for that box office money. Apparently, The Addams Family 2 pulled in a better than expected $18 million. The film served as a sequel to the 2019 Addams Family, which debuted at 30 million. But that, I believe, was also going day and date on HBO Max. Oh, and it kind of looks like all right, don't worry, Brent. I got you. No spoilers. Meanwhile, the Warner Brothers movie The Many Saints of Newark, a prequel to Sopranos, flopped in its debut, generating a paltry $5 million. Ooh, and it was opened wide, 3,000 venues. Like the studio's entire 2021 slate, the film opened concurrently on HBO Max at no extra cost to subscribers. Well, if people can stay at home and watch something for free, yeah, they're gonna do that. And it had a $50 million production budget. Oh my goodness. That is not great for them. So, talking a bit more about just the box office in general, but I think that gets us all of the big hits from the domestic box office. To sum it all up, Venom was a very good boy and made a lot of money because of it. And I guess I'll just finish here by adding in my own thoughts on the film. I think Dory in the live stream on Friday, you just got out of Venom and gave your thoughts on it. And I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I feel like I feel like Venom 2 is the better version of the first movie. Almost like it wasn't a soft reboot in the way that we would normally talk about soft reboots, but it felt that way. Like they just had a better idea of what the film was going to be, about how these two characters interact with each other, speaking of Eddie Brock and Venom. And the villain was a lot more, I wouldn't say the villain was more compelling, but the villain kind of just made more sense. Um, but honestly, a lot of the beats of the first movie get copy and pasted in here. I won't get into spoiler territory, but if it happened in the first movie, there's probably a version of that same scene or thing happening in this film. And it's just executed a bit better. The humor works a bit better. And it seems like now the filmmakers of Venom 2 are kind of in on the joke, where, as in the first one, they were kind of like, hey, let's go crazy. Let's go do crazy things. And you know what? I think. Oh, there we go. I thought maybe the chat I was seeing in my OBS stream was behind. Let's see. We've got Dory saying, I have a Venom statement, might trigger the chat. No spoilers. Go for it. Do it. Do it. As long as it's not spoilery, do it. We have the weird one slinging sharpshooter saying, I wish Venom was rated R just to hear Venom say the F word. It's so funny when he curses. He does say it once in Venom 2. He gets one F-bomb. But I think the R rating, the only thing that you really, and it's like Dory has a similar, saying something similar here, don't make a Venom movie unless you make it rated R. I think the only thing that you really get if you were to do a rated R Venom film is you just get more blood, and perhaps you don't get cutaways when Venom bites someone's head off, right? Like that's really what we're missing is blood. And you know, I understand leaving it to the imagination. I also understand the studio wanting to make the most money possible. I wouldn't be surprised, just based on how this film is constructed. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a director's cut, an unrated cut that will be coming down the line. I don't know if like Disney's big on that, but of course this is a Sony film, so Sony can just do whatever they want. And there are a lot of moments where there is something, like there is a violent thing that happens that is cut away from. So I imagine that in the director's cut or in a rated R or unrated version of the film, they just don't cut away from those things and actually show Venom like properly biting someone's head off. I think a lot of that stuff could exist in an unrated cut if there is one. So we'll keep a lookout for that, because I'm sure there will be some kind of home video release press release talking about it. And yeah, I think we'll definitely get a more bloody version of Venom 2 at some point. And we got our new friend saying he does say it, the F word, once, and it was so funny. Yeah, and they saved it till the end, or near the end, so it made sense to do. All right. So, if y'all just excuse me for one moment, I know I usually don't take breaks this early, but my nose, like I've had to sneeze for the last like 10 minutes, and it is awful. So I will be right back. You know what that means.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back, Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to John. I'll be right back. Gotta introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back, Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to John. I'll be right back. Gotta introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. You understand?
And we're back. And my sinuses have been cleaned a little bit more. Let's get this little focus thing going. Yeah. Now we're doing everything that we need to be doing. Whew. Caffeine's starting to hit. Okay. Yeah, just before we get back into this, just to address this last comment on Venom, saying, from Sharpshooter saying, I feel like Sony one day will release a rated R Venom or Venom 2. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense for them, especially since if enough people clamor for it as well, then yeah, that just only makes sense for them to do it. And maybe Venom 3 will be a little bit more rated R, or maybe a little bit more PG-13. We'll see. They'll do whatever makes the most money, so I don't know. And by the way, if you're here, don't forget to like the live stream, because we need those. We need that engagement. Gotta appease the engagement gods. So if you thought that we were done talking about the box office just because we're done talking about Venom 2 box office, you are sorely mistaken. Let's see if I can actually close that ad. Woo! All right. So now we're going to be looking at the rest of the box office, because there was a lot of it over the weekend. So this is going to be talking about No Time to Die, Venom 2, Dune, a whole bunch of stuff. This comes to us from Nancy Tarlagone, and she is writing for Deadline. So, apparently there's been an update. A big and busy weekend at the international box office reaffirmed the power of theatrical as MGM and Eon Universal's No Time to Die bonded with audiences to the tune of $119 million, which is real good for the international box office. If you'll remember, we were talking about Dune's international debut not that long ago, and it debuted with $35 million, and that was like a good thing for them. I think largely this number has to do with the fact that No Time to Die was also releasing in the UK. I'm not sure if Dune was releasing in the international in such an important international territory as the UK. But obviously everyone just wants to watch the shit out of a new James Bond movie, and that's exactly what they did. To continue with the article, in like-for-like markets at current exchange rates, No Time to Die is in line with Skyfall and just below Spectre, excluding previews, which is fantastic considering we are in a pandemic still. Meanwhile, and this just gets into Venom's $13.8 million in Russia. And just reiterating here, that is the market's best debut of any film during the health crisis, taking over the benchmark previously set by Warner Brothers and Legendary's Dune. The later film, in play for 3 weeks, has topped $100 million overseas. You see? Dune, it's getting there. It's getting there. It's going to be really interesting to see how much it actually makes when it opens domestically, but all of this good press that they're getting, all of this good word of mouth, hopefully that helps. Let's check in on the chat. Sharpshooter saying, I'm excited Halloween Kills, all of the originals are returning. Yeah, that should be... Halloween Kills should be fun. I don't really know what to expect out of its box office. I think it's actually the biggest thing coming out on the 15th for that release day, but it will be competing with the second week of No Time to Die. But I'm hoping good things for it. I hope it makes all the money. I hope it does well. Sharpshooter also saying Blumhouse showed way too much in the final Halloween Kills trailer. Oh, absolutely. I think if you go back through my the Cinemateq Twitter history when the Halloween Kills trailer came out, I think my my response was just like, oh, so that's just the whole movie. Like the different kills, the different setups for the kills. Like it was a 3-minute movie and it just was the movie, which was blah. Dory asking about GoldDerby.com dropping their list of Oscar frontrunners. I did not see that actually, but that's probably something that we'll check out a little bit later in this live stream. And Brent jumping in, talking about the rated R conversation, saying Alien vs. Predator Requiem, whatever it may be, probably stands for... somehow that R stands for bad movie in my mind. Alien vs. Predator, bad movie. Was rated R, and it was somehow much worse than AVP. I think a film should only be rated R if it actually makes sense to do so. That said, filming 2 versions covers both bases. Yeah, but it's not even that, like in the case of Venom 2, as I was saying, they didn't film 2 versions of it. They filmed 1 version of it, which probably could have been rated R, and this is just speculation on my point. And then they just cut it down to PG-13 and didn't invest as heavily in, say, like CGI blood and stuff like that. So I think based on what I've seen of Venom 2, you could very easily turn it into a rated R film if you just extended a couple of sequences here and there and added more blood to the film. Like that gets you to a rated R very quickly in my mind. But yeah, going back to this article, because we need to bask in the glory that is the money. So overall, it was a terrific weekend for moviegoing. Specifically, the industry has been speculating that if any movie could get folks back into cinema in the pandemic era, the latest in the enduring Bond franchise was the one. And so it has delivered with the biggest gross for a Hollywood movie this session, and the first time a Hollywood film has crossed the $100 million mark in its overseas debut during the pandemic without China in the mix. So that is huge for No Time to Die. It has not even debuted in China yet, and it's already hit 100 million. All kudos to 007, and we'll get back to him in a minute. However, Her Majesty's super secret agent doesn't get the crown of offshore global leader this session, as that belongs to Chinese propaganda film The Battle at Lake Changjin. I love the fact that they point out that it's actually a propaganda film, which grossed a staggering 1.51 billion local currency, $230 million in China. Held back to release during the National Day holiday and sporting a 9.5 score from audiences, the Wuxing Star is set during the second phase offensive of the Korean War, or the war to resist UN aggression and aid for Korea, as it is known locally, and tells the story of the People's Volunteer Army entering North Korea for the titular battle, which was a turning point in the final conflict. It broke several single-day box office records over the weekend, and the Maoyan, I'm not even sure what word that is, Maoyan is predicting an 4.59 billion local currency, $714 million finish for the full run. This would make it the second biggest Chinese film of the year. In IMAX, the film grossed 12.9 million from the format's third best start with a local title. Dang. James Bond is heading to China for October 29th. But this weekend is all about how other international markets responded to this tentpole in grand fashion, and in some cases a pre-pandemic level, which is wild. So, No Time to Die released in 54 Universal and MGM markets ahead of its domestic bow on October 8th. Conservative pre-weekend projections were in the $90 million range, and Bond blasted by that. What other information can we glean here? The home market has traditionally led 007 films box office wise, and this installment was no different, with an estimated $34.8 million coming from its UK debut. That's the 6th biggest opening weekend of all time and the biggest 3-day weekend in the franchise's history. So, well done, 007. You really did bring people back in the UK. And this just gets into some more country by country breakdowns. I don't know how much we need to go through these. Look at some of the big ones. The film made $14.7 million in Germany. Japan, it made $5.8 million. Korea made $4.6. Pretty much just making money all over the place. And I think we can expect it to make even more when it opens here this week. I know I'm excited for when I get to see it on Friday. And yeah, I think that's about all we really need to cover from the international box office. The big story being almost $120 million for No Time to Die. Dune continuing to do well. Venom doing records in different places. Overall, good to see. Good to see. I don't know to what extent this kind of thing benefits smaller theaters, but I hope they are able to get in on some of this as well. And yeah, I think Brent, going back to chat, when Brent says, 2 versions via editing, not like actually filming 2 versions. Yeah, that was basically what I was talking about. It's not like when they did the 2 different versions of Dracula, and they just shot like the Spanish language version and the English language version at the same time and used the same sets. And then we have Sharpshooter saying Blumhouse should have not put Loomis in the Halloween Kills final trailer. Oh, I forgot that they... Oh, you know what? I didn't actually watch the final trailer because I was worried that they would put way too much more of the film in that trailer. Like, I wanted to maintain as much blindness going into Halloween Kills as I could. So for when the final trailer came out, I was like, nah, I don't need to watch that. I've already seen too much already. But they brought Loomis back, eh? Did they get the same actor? No, Donald Pleasance is dead, isn't he? I mean, he must be dead. Yeah, he died like a long time ago. Okay. Oh, he played Blofeld as well. I totally missed that. There he is right there, playing Blofeld. So he plays Dr. Loomis and Blofeld. That's quite the career, Donald Pleasance. Okay. So now that we've established that No Time to Die is doing real well, money-wise, let's get into a little bit more Bond talk, this time coming to us from Taika Waititi. Last week, we talked a bit about Ben Winshaw, and I apologize if I'm forgetting how to pronounce his name properly. He had some thoughts on who should be playing James Bond going forward, and it looks like Taika Waititi is getting into the debate, perhaps being a bit more hilarious with it. This is coming to us from Jamil David, written by Jamil David on Cinema Blend. Let's see how clickbaity Cinema Blend was today. So let's see. To quote the article, No Time to Die is the end of Daniel Craig's run as James Bond, and the search for his replacement will start to ramp up soon. There are a ton of options for the next 007, and the decision is a big one and will take some time to find the perfect actor. Director Taika Waititi knows how big of a deal the search is, and he has an idea for what direction the Bond franchise should go. And of course, his hilarious sentiments are so on brand. Let's see here. Everyone has their own personal pick for who the next Bond should be. Whether it's Idris Elba or Tom Hardy, there are plenty of options with some clear favorites, and part of the fun is the speculation and the unexpected possibilities. So it was honestly only a matter of time before What We Do in Shadows director hilariously threw his own hat in the ring. On Twitter, he posted a hilarious reply to the news that the search of the new Bond will start next year. Here's the post. Hello, Taika Waititi says. I've been here this whole time, Brox. I think specifically referencing Broccoli, the head of the company that runs the Bond franchise. So I'm guessing, based on the looks of this, that Taika Waititi is throwing his own hat in the ring. His own long blonde hair, white hat. Ooh, and look at those big eyes. That's perfect. That's perfect for James Bond. James Bond is nothing but someone who has very large eyes. And this, I don't know. That kind of looks like a James Bond to me. Actually, it looks more like a James Bond villain if we're being real. Like, that mustache screams, I have a nefarious plan that only makes a little bit of sense. I suppose this is exactly what I should have expected when I saw this headline. I think there's not really much else to say about this. They go into a little bit more information in the article talking about other people who are potentially auditioning for the role or who have shown interest in it. That includes Henry Cavill. But there's just so many other people who are going to be up for this. My guess is that they go with someone young and with someone who is not as well known to audiences, so they don't have to pay as much. I can only imagine that if they were to try to do it with Henry Cavill, his immediate starting price would be quite high. He is Superman, after all. Whereas if they were to go with, say, a Bridgerton actor, let's say, I imagine that paycheck would be a lot less, considering they have much less name recognition and things like this. And you don't need a big star to bring in people to see James Bond. People will just go see James Bond. That was evident when Daniel Craig took over the role, because he wasn't really a well-known actor at that point. He had done some things. I think A Layer Cake was maybe his biggest film at the time. And then he did Bond, and everyone was like, oh shit, this guy's great. So yeah, people come to see Bond. They don't come to see the star. And especially because people will want to come see the first movie by whoever they end up casting, it's going to do well anyways. So they kind of can go with someone a bit more obscure if it makes more sense for their bottom line, which of course they will always do. Going back over to chat, Sharpshooter saying, I'm happy finally Friday the 13th lawsuit is over. Oh yes. But the can of worms that opened up is that's going to be going on for a long ass time. We talked about it a bit last week, but there is some suggestion that people like the estate of Stan Lee, as an example, will try to use the exact same tactics used in that lawsuit in order to wrestle the rights back to certain characters from Marvel. So that is just going to be a very long, drawn out, and wonderful thing to watch, especially if Marvel is forced to pay more for stuff. I always like to see that. And I think because of the way that the Friday the 13th lawsuit, the way it all worked out with, like, that lawsuit really only has to do with the domestic market. So it still doesn't mean that we're going to be getting a new Friday the 13th movie anytime soon. It is, of course, a hurdle that they had to get over, but it is by no means the last hurdle. So we will not be seeing Jason Voorhees in a movie anytime soon, but a bit sooner now than we were going to see him otherwise. So now, let us continue with the movie news. Moving on to Paul Schrader. He just released a movie called The Car Counter, which is, I will say, divisive in people's response to it. I thought it was okay. I know that there are other people watching this, Dory, especially I'm thinking about you, who hated it. But that hasn't stopped director Paul Schrader from talking about his next movie called Master Gardener. So to quote this article from Marta Balaga, writing for Variety, Paul Schrader, who received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Zurich Film Festival on Friday, is planning to start shooting thriller Master Gardener in February with Joel Egerton and Sigourney Weaver starring, and the third role to be played by a young woman of color. Zendaya was his first choice, but they couldn't agree on the fee, he told the audience at the Swiss Festival. Zendaya is just too dang expensive to work with Paul Schrader, which kind of makes sense. If you're going to work on a Paul Schrader film, it's going to be a lower budget film. You're basically just doing it to work with Paul Schrader. And as we've seen with with The Card Counter, the results are not guaranteed to be excellent. So you have to keep that in mind. To to continue with the article, Master Gardener is about a horticulturalist torn between two women, one old enough to be his mother and the other young enough to be his daughter. I was thinking about that guy, but then two women show up. He's having romantic relations with both, but what I liked the most is that now they can talk to each other. What would happen in Taxi Driver if Sybil Shepherd and Jodie Foster went out to get coffee? Which is an interesting way of going about this. And I think a lot of this then just starts talking about other parts of his career. So I'm guessing this article was just meant as a lead-in to talk more about Schrader. So let's just leave the rest of that for another time. I'm more interested in this Master Gardener casting news. I was at first taken aback when I read the first part and that this will be starring Joel Egerton and Sigourney Weaver. I wasn't really sure why in my head why that was strange. I think it was partially because I didn't really understand how their roles in the film would be related to each other. Considering this is Paul Schrader we're talking about, I was thinking that probably Joel Egerton would be on some kind of quest for revenge or self-discovery or something like this, and Sigourney Weaver would just be someone who helps facilitate that, as we've seen recently in the card counter, kind of like what Tiffany Haddish was doing in that film. But now it seems like they are going to be romantically involved, and they still need to find the young woman of color to play this other role, this other lover for Joel Egerton. So it does beg the question, if Zendaya was their first choice, and I believe Zendaya is like, what, 24? 25? Then who is the young... 25. So then who would the young woman of color be who could also do that? I think Tessa Thompson. Ugh, is she too old for this? Could she play young? Oh, Tessa Thompson's 38? Jesus. She's older than I am. I thought she... Oh my god. I don't know. I can't tell how old people are. This is something that I have discovered this morning. Wow. All right. People in the chat, let me know. Who is a young woman of color who could do this role? It's not Zendaya. And I apparently don't know what I'm talking about in terms of how old other people are. Jesus, that threw me through a loop. And it also threw me for a loop as well. All right, so Paul Schrader's next film, Master Gardener, still has some casting to do. And once that gets announced, of course, we'll talk about it on this channel, because that's what we do. So now, moving on to some news from Variety. This is written by John Hopewell. The White Room from Everybody Has a Plan's Anna Piterbarg set up at Bikini, Picardia. So this is some industry news. And honestly, the news cycle over the weekend was not that exciting outside of the box office. So this is going to give us a chance to go through some perhaps lesser known news about new films being made and how things are being picked up. This is particularly looking at South American film, which I always like supporting and putting out into the world, because I feel like out of all of the continental films getting made, South America is often talked about near the bottom of that. I think Africa and African film would probably slot in below it. But to me, South American film has such, and like, not to say that African cinema does not have a rich history, but there is I believe, a longer tradition of filmmaking in many parts of South America, and it's just always underserved, especially when you look at things like the Criterion Collection, excuse me, and the like. There's just not a lot of South American stuff going on there. So I like to highlight South American cinema when I can. And I also like to highlight African cinema when I can. But this time we're talking about South American cinema. So to quote the article, Chile's Picardia Films, headed by director-producer Diego Ruger, has boarded The White Room, the next feature by Argentina's Anna Piterbarg, who caught international attention with Viggo Mortensen's star Everybody Has a Plan, her 2012 feature debut, distributed by Fox International Productions. Have you seen Everybody Has a Plan, chat? Anyone in there has seen this movie? Let me know if you have, because I don't believe I have. Written and to be directed by Piterbarg, The White Room is lead produced by Buenos Aires-based Bikini Films, headed by Edson Sidone. His credits include Sigayu's 2018 Locarno Golden Leopard winner, The Once and the Future, and Toronto world premiere Carnival, which scooped Best Direction at last year's Guadalajara Fest and Best Ibero-American Picture at the 2021 Magala Festival. The White Room is one of the highest profile projects at this year's Guadalajara co-production meetings, which kicked off on October 3rd. And then we get into a lot more information down here below. That's a very strange sentence. This first paragraph talks a little bit more about the film, so let's do that. Fiction, but based on the personal experiences of the director. The White Room begins with Clara, age 5, who journeys with her father and her dog to the north of Argentina. They are searching for her mother, who got sick and decided to leave the house. They locate her in a church in Yavi, a small town in Jujuy. From the inside the car, Clara watches her parents argue. She tries to get out but can't. The dog barks, the dust swirl, in Piterbarg's description. The feature project then cuts to Clara, 17, we are really just going through the whole plot, who begins a journey of initiation to the almost lunar landscapes of northern Argentina and takes in the twists and turns of her consciousness in her quest to understand her mother's disappearance. So that sounds kind of fun. A little bit more of the director talking about what is going on. The story of the White Room is anchored in the north of Argentina, of course, so that should be interesting. If you've never had the opportunity to travel there or see it, you'll be able to go there cinematically. And this is... Wait, does this mean that the film is also starring Mortensen? No. That's referring back to Everybody Has a Plan. So we don't really need to get into that, although... Kind of interesting that in this film, Everybody Has a Plan, Mortensen starred as two identical twins, which makes me want to watch it even more. Because Mortensen acting with Mortensen, that's just good shit. Yeah, so there we go. That's just some international film news to whet your appetites this morning. A very capable director being able to make a new film is always news that I will celebrate and will always make me happy. So let's go back to chat and check in. We got Sharpshooter saying Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason's face was so ugly. It's literally scary. Special effects were horrible. I believe Part 8 is what? Jason Takes Manhattan. That is one I haven't seen. In fact, I haven't seen most of the Friday the 13th films outside of the first one. I will probably be rectifying that at some point. I'm now going through all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films that I haven't seen, and they're actually better than I was expecting. So maybe the same can be said of Friday the 13th. But from the sounds of it, you are not so pleased with the effects of Jason Takes Manhattan. So let's move on to another little bit of film news. This one coming from Variety. Also Brent Lang. Tony winner Matthew Lopez to make directorial debut with LGBTQ plus romance Red, White, and Royal Blue. And this one is exclusive to Variety. And now it is exclusively on Cinemateq. Although it's probably not exclusively on Cinemateq at all. I'm sure there's someone else on YouTube who has talked about something like this. Anyways, Matthew Lopez, who made history on Sunday as the first Latin playwright to win the Tony Award for Best Play, will have his feature directorial debut with the LGBTQ romantic comedy Red, White, and Royal Blue. Congratulations on your Tony win. And I'm kind of excited about this because I love films that play into the theatrical nature of screenplays. The idea of just putting a couple of actors in a room and just having them go at it for like the entire film. I love stuff like that. So this is one of the reasons why I'm talking about this. When people make the transition from the stage theater world to film, I always find that fascinating to see how they approach the medium and how their theatrical prowess and experience translates to screen. So I'm interested in this. Let me know if you are interested in this as well in the chat. Back to the article. The Amazon Studios production is an adaptation of Casey McQuiston's 2019 bestseller of the same name. It centers on a star-crossed power couple, the Latin character of Alex Claremont Diaz, the son of the President of the United States, woo, and his relationship with Prince Henry, grandson of the Queen of England. Oh my. So very important people having sex. Lopez rewrote a draft of the script by Ted Moliwer, who also wrote Halston, in addition to being tapped to direct the film. Here's the official logline of the film. What happens when America's prince falls in love with an actual prince? The film follows Alex Claremont Diaz, who, upon his mother's election as president, was promptly cast as the American equivalent of a young royal. Handsome, charismatic, brilliant, his image is pure millennial marketing gold for the White House. There's only one problem. Alex has a long-running feud with his royal counterpart across the pond. And when the tabloids get hold of a photo involving an Alex-Henry altercation, U.S.-British relations take a turn for the worse. I mean, actually, though, I kind of have a feeling that they wouldn't. But anyways, the movie plot will do what the movie plot needs to do. Heads of family, state, and other handlers devise a plan for damage control, staging a truce between the two rivals. What at first begins as a fake Instagram-able friendship grows into something more meaningful than either Alex or Henry could have imagined. Soon Alex finds himself hurtling into a secret romance with the surprisingly unstuffy Henry that could complicate his mother's re-election campaign, upend two nations, and begs the question, can love save the world after all? I don't know if love can save the world, everybody. In fact, I don't think it can, because we've already had a lot of love, and look where we are. So this next little bit of the article gets a bit into talking about how busy Mr. Matthew Lopez is currently. He's currently writing a remake of The Bodyguard for Warner Brothers. He's doing a musical adaptation of Some Like It Hot, and he's scripting a feature film adaptation of the novel Leading Men. So this guy is doing lots of stuff right now. So it sounds like this is going to be pretty fun. I was not expecting such a high concept story to be at the center of all of this. When I see Tony Award winner, I don't think of, romance that spans an ocean type stuff, especially in terms of characters like the son of the president and a prince. I guess I always just assume that stage sort of sensibilities, theatrical stage sensibilities, keep things a bit smaller and a bit more contained, but then go over the top with production design. So the story is like focused and the story is fairly simple. In the case of something like Mamma Mia, it's a bit of a high concept idea, but it's it's contained to an island, as an example. Whereas this just sounds like it's way over the top in both story and perhaps the production as well. So we will have to see when it eventually comes out. But congratulations to Matthew Lopez. You've been having a fairly good couple of weeks from the sounds of it. And I look forward to seeing more about Red, White, and Royal Blue. All right. Let me know in the chat. Are you guys excited about things like this? I want to know, because if you're not, then maybe I don't talk about things like this as much, although I probably would. I would probably talk about this regardless of what you say. So this next piece of news is strictly for me because David Duchovny is so cool. I love him. I'm a huge X-Files stan, and I will follow this man wherever he goes. This report coming from Deadline, written by our old pal Justin Kroll. David Duchovny and Leah Long join Jonah Hill in Netflix untitled Kenya Barris comedy. So David Duchovny is doing funny things again, and I am all for that. David Duchovny and Leah Long have rounded out the cast of a new untitled Netflix comedy starring Jonah Hill, with Kenya Barris directing. They join an ensemble that already includes Lauren London, Eddie Murphy, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Sam Jay, and Molly Gordon. And that, dear cinephiles, is a pretty good cast. The film follows a new couple, Hill and London, and their families who find themselves examining modern love and family dynamics amidst class and cultures, societal expectations, and generational differences. I wonder if that means that David Duchovny is going to be playing like Jonah Hill's father, or something like that, or someone's father, because I think he's probably age appropriate for being Jonah Hill's dad. How old is David Duchovny? He's got to be getting close to 60, right? David Duchovny. Ah, he is 61. So yeah, and Jonah Hill's in his 30s? Jonah Hill's 37. So yeah, 37 up to 61. Yeah. Yeah, that could be a father-son thing. David Duchovny is Jonah Hill's son. Or David Duchovny is Jonah Hill's father. That could be fun. Getting a bit more into this. Duchovny has been on a roll as of late, recently wrapping production on Paramount Pictures' new Pet Sematary prequel, while also earning rave reviews playing himself in Netflix's The Chair. Outside of his acting, he also recently released another album and published his 4th book earlier this year. He has been busy. He is repped by WME and Mosaic. This project makes a reteaming for Long and Barris, who recently worked together on Barris's series #BlackAF. On the film side, she was recently seen opposite Anthony Mackie in The Banker. I have not seen The Banker. If you're in here and you've seen The Banker, let me know what you think about it. Well, I don't know why I said that like William Shatner, but that's just where we went. And just talk a bit more about who she's represented by. We don't need to really get into that. And yeah, we don't really know much else about this film as of yet. So that's it. David Duchovny and Neil Long are in a movie together, and Jonah Hill is starring in it, and it will be on Netflix at some point in the future. Congrats to all for the casting news. Excited to see David Duchovny hopefully play Jonah Hill's dad. Now we move on to a bit of the Many Saints of Newark news, although we already talked earlier in the program how that movie bombed. I also saw some reaction from people that I follow on Twitter saying that it was just not a good movie. Like, even if you're a Sopranos fan, it's just not a very well-constructed film. So, sorry, Sopranos fans, but for those of you who are big fans of David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, we've got some good news for you. David Chase has struck a 5-year first-look TV and film deal with WarnerMedia. Man, even Rocco's getting out of his box for this. Are you a Sopranos fan, Rocco? He's scratching himself, so that must mean yes. Fresh from the release of The Many Saints of Newark, The Sopranos prequel feature, David Chase has signed a 5-year first-look deal with WarnerMedia. The deal covers film and TV and will see Chase develop content for HBO, HBO Max, and the Warner Brothers Pictures Group. It comes as the movie, which stars Alessandro Navoni as Dickie Monsani and James Gandolfini's son, Michael Gandolfini, as a young Tony Soprano, is released today, October 1st, in theaters via HBO Max. So this news coming out before the demise of the film, get out of here, before the demise of the film was widely known. In addition to The Many Saints of Newark and The Sopranos, which launched on HBO in 1999 and is widely considered one of the greatest television series of all time, Chase directed rock and roll feature Not Fade Away, which came out in 2012. Nicole Lambert is the EVP of Chase Films and producer of The Many Saints of Newark alongside Chase. Deadline understands that there is no current plans for a spin-off series of The Sopranos in the works, but Chase has recently talked of the chances of more stories set in the Sopranos universe. One would have to wonder if the response to the new Many Saints of Newark film will perhaps put the kibosh on that. Chase earlier told Deadline earlier this month that he has considered doing a sequel to The Many Saints of Newark. Not with that money, not with that box office. He said that such a potential story would take place after the film, which is set in the late 60s and 70s, and before the series, which starts around 1998. There's only one way I would do it, and that was if Terry Winter and I could write the script together. That I would do. However, he admitted that he's much more interested in doing other things. He had previously written and developed A Rhythm of Dreams, a 6-part miniseries for HBO that told the story of the beginning of Hollywood, following a college-educated mechanical engineer and a cowboy with a violent past, who form an unlikely producing partnership and together become pioneers and then powers for a time in motion pictures. He said that it was all lined up, but HBO wanted him to shoot in Ontario, and there were problems with money, so Chase and the premium network parted ways on it. What's wrong with shooting in Ontario? I'm in Ontario right now. We're good. We're nice. We're good people. Lots of films get made in Ontario. It's actually funny that they say like Ontario as opposed to say, wait, That's not how you spell Ontario. Maybe they're not shooting in Ontario at all. I'm just going to move on from this. The thing I wrote for HBO was it would have been pretty good. I may go back to that, Chase added to Deadline. You know, just a little self-aggrandizing. Never hurt anybody. Let's see. The deal covers both TV and film, but Chase has not been shy with his opinions on WarnerMedia's strategy regarding the latter, particularly the way that it is releasing all of its 2021 features day and date on HBO Max. So Chase is not a fan of that, and he will be even less of a fan of it after the performance of The Many Saints of Newark at the box office. Chase said that he didn't think he would have taken the job on The Many Saints of Newark if he knew it was going to be released day and date on streaming service. I think it's awful, he said. He added that he was extremely angry about the move. Once again, I don't see his opinion changing about that anytime soon. To quote him further, if one of those executives was sitting here and I was to start pissing and moaning about it, they'd say, you know, there's 17 other movies that have the same problem. What could we do? COVID. Well, I know. But those 16 other movies didn't start out as a television show. They didn't have to shed that television image before you get people to the theater. But we do. And that's where we're at. People should go see it in a theater. It was designed to be a movie. It was. It's beautiful as a movie. I never thought that it would be back on HBO. Never, he added, which is a good point. When you make a film like The Many Saints of Newark, it becomes that much more difficult to get people to go see it in theaters because it is just tied to a television show. I think that's probably also true of, say, like the Simpsons movie or the Bob's Burgers movie coming out soon, or really any film that is a direct, that is directly tied to any kind of television show. Probably a reason why the Deadwood movie didn't get released in theaters, to my knowledge. It just went straight to HBO because that is where the audience is. That's where the audience exists. So yeah, David J's making an excellent point there. So that is the end of this story. I'm sure it's not the very end of it because, of course, in the future we will have to talk about what he actually ends up getting around to making, especially if it's a feature film. Well, really only if it's a feature film. If he makes a TV show, I don't care about that. That's not what we care about here on Cinemateq. We're not TV tech. No. That channel doesn't exist yet. Although the channel blows up and we start making sister channels that are run by other people, TV tech could be something. Television tech? Teletech? Ooh, I like Teletech, actually. I'll save that one. But yeah, good for David Chase. I'm glad that he was able to get this deal done. Hopefully he is not deterred by the release of The Many Saints of Newark, in the sense that if he does another film for HBO, for Warner Brothers, he will probably have to be very clear about the fact that it needs to go to theaters and not just go on their streaming service. But I'm sure that's something they'll be able to work out. Moving on to a little bit of collector news. I don't know how many of you have seen The Green Knight. It is a... Rocco, you haven't seen The Green Knight. Don't lie. It is a wild and strange acid fantasy type movie. And if you are a fan of it, and I did enjoy it. You can now own Gawain's sword, and it'll only cost you $450, which, for a movie prop, isn't that bad. So let's get into this article, which was written by Jeff Ewing for /Film. Many long-fabled legends around King Arthur promise that one faithful future day, the 6th century legendary king will return. But in a stunning twist of 21st century fate, it's A24 who will finally allow us to take a piece of Arthurian legend home. They're releasing a limited run of Gawain's sword from the Green Knight, not allowing you to go on your own, hopefully safe Arthurian adventures. There's no word, of course, if there will be a companion Green Knight axe, but it's still the perfect gift for the hopeful knight in your family. So this, I think, is saying that there will be a limited run of them. So it's not the actual sword from the film, from the sounds of it. It's just a collector's item that they're making, which is a little not as cool as what I initially thought. Gawain's sword, now available at the A24 shop. Let's see if it's still in stock. Oh, it's sold out, everybody. Never mind. Looks like they made 150 of them. And limit one order per customer. Still, that looks That looks pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I don't have any place to hang that in my apartment, but I could have perhaps found something. Oh, look at this. They also did a Green Knight fantasy role-playing game as well. That's pretty hilarious. Who wants to do Green Knight D&D on this channel? I don't know how that would work, but I'm into it. So obviously now that these are all sold out, we don't really need to go into this too much more. The sword itself is a replica of that used by Dev Patel's Gawain in David Lowery's The Green Knight. In the film, Gawain joins his uncle, King Arthur, around the round table for a Christmas feast. Never actually confirmed to be King Arthur, we're just supposed to assume that. Their celebrations are interrupted when the Green Knight, a hulking armored warrior who looks more tree than human, rides in on horseback to issue a challenge. He tells the knights to find their bravest and inflict a wound upon him, and 1 year hence they must find him that the wound can be repaid. Gawain volunteers, brandishes the sword to take the Green Knight's head, and the knight grabs the severed noggin and rides out to await his 1 year hence reprisal. Yes. Yes, it is an interesting film. And I did see some, I can't remember if I actually read this in CinemaScope. It might have been in CinemaScope, actually. For those of you who don't know, there is a film magazine that's published by by York University, particularly their film program there called CinemaScope. And I believe if you look at their tagline, they are the longest running magazine about international cinema in the world. I don't know how true that is. But they had a review or just a short piece on Green Knight, which I think if your initial opinions of the Green Knight were less than favorable, or like you were kind of wondering yourself like what the hell is going on here, this article as a companion piece works really well for helping. At least it helped me, and this was, you know, a couple of months after seeing the Green Knight in theaters, and it kind of helped wrap some things up in my head, and I was like, oh yeah, that movie actually is pretty good. I don't believe that CinemaScope has their articles available online, unfortunately. This is the magazine here that I'm talking about. It's got Memoria on the cover. I guess you can download stuff? Oh, they have digital issues. I didn't know that. I mean, this is probably... I can probably download it. Yeah. So for the low price of $6.25, if you want to help support a film magazine that has some of the best writing about film in it. Honestly, every time I read through this magazine, I'm like, God damn it. I want to write like this one day, but I know I never will. I subscribe to it, and this is not sponsored, but CinemaScope is great. Yeah. It's really wonderful. And they may actually have some articles here that that are available. Oh, do they have their Titan? Oh, okay. So their Titan review is available. Wait, does that mean that the Green Knight one is available as well? Wait, what? I don't understand this. This is everything. This is everything from the magazine. Did I pay a subscription for this for nothing? Okay, it doesn't look like they have everything. Yeah, okay. So there are some things missing. You don't... Oh my god. You do get things that are in the magazine that are not available online, but there's a lot here. Anyways, this magazine's great. If you're into international cinema and really good writing on film, I recommend it. Oop, no, don't want to spoil the surprise for the end. Let's take a look now at I'm just gonna go back to the me camera. All of this. I'm just gonna check in to see if there's any late breaking news. This will probably end up being a shorter version episode of the morning movie show. I am a little bit tired from the weekend, as you can probably tell. So we'll just see if there's any wild and crazy news, and let's see what we can see. BFI did some stuff. That's video game news. We need to know about that. Jerry Seinfeld has apologized for the B movie. Oh, over the uncomfortable sexual aspect. And he said that it wasn't appropriate. Yep, Yeah, that's probably probably a wise thing for him to do. A huge haul for Golden Calves. I was talking about the Netherlands Film Festival. Oh, there's a new trailer for Violet, which I believe debuted at TIFF. Y'all should probably go check that out after we're done here. And it looks like we've got a new trailer for a film called Tick Tick Boom, which stars Andrew Garfield. I don't know if you guys remember this from last week, but I did reveal that we are no longer doing trailer reactions on this show, but I may still do them after the fact if they're big enough films that that I think a reaction will be required. Yes, that is about all of the news. So let's get back to the news that I had already picked out from over the weekend. This one is coming to us from Tim and Dams over at Variety. I don't know why I say it like that, but it just sounds cool to me. And it is that director Marten Persiel has a new movie coming out, and it is a wildlife extinction movie, Everything Will Change. And I think this is a pretty important topic to be addressed in a film like this, because we always hear about how fucked we are going into the future, but we never really realize the extent to which what's happening with climate change right now, how it will change everything in ways that we haven't imagined yet. And this film, from the sounds of it, will try to do the work of explaining, like, well, you know, the path that we're on currently, not only are the oceans going to rise, and not only will there be like a ton of climate refugees because certain parts of the world are going to become uninhabitable over the next 50 years, also a lot of wildlife is going to start going extinct. We are currently in the middle, or maybe near at the tail end even, of a mass extinction event. That obviously something that, you know, this has been going on for a long, long time, to the point where it's like hard to notice it as anything other than business as usual. But we are in the middle of a mass extinction event currently. And if it keeps going, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for all of us. So this movie will more than likely take a look at that. So let's get a bit into this film, see what it's going to be all about. Weaving together fiction, archive, and documentary, Marten Persiel's Everything Will Change is a dystopian movie that addresses one of the most urgent issues of our time, the extinction of wildlife. Set in 2054, when wildlife has disappeared, it's the story of three friends who go on a journey to discover what happened to their planet. The answer they discover lies in a decade, the 2020s, also known as the right nows, when a bright future was still possible, but a lack of action prevented the wholesale loss of once abundant biodiversity. Stop me if this sounds a little too on the nose. German director Persiel previously helmed This Ain't California, which won Best Film in Berlinale's Perspective section in 2012. Wait, This Ain't California? That's a skateboarding documentary, isn't it? Because if so, I saw it when it was doing its rounds, and I tried to convince the company I was working for at the time to pick it up. Yes, Dogtown and Z-Boys meets the lives of others. This is a really good documentary. It was on Netflix for a time. I don't know if it still is, but I recommend watching it if you can. And now I'm actually really into this. I think I may even have had like email correspondence with the director now that I think of it. That was a long time ago, though. I mean, it was about 10 years ago. Everything Will Change world premiered at the Zurich Film Festival last Friday as part of the Focus competition. TF1 Studios handling global sales of the film. So this piece is kind of just saying, yo, let's get this film purchased. It does sound a bit like a promotion piece as opposed to just a straightforward explainer of what the film actually is. Brent asking, TJ, have you seen the David Attenborough documentary from last year? Probably one of the most depressing documentaries I have ever seen. Which one was that? I mean, the answer is no, but what was the title of it? Do you know? If you can leave that in the chat, please do so, because I haven't seen it, and there may be others out there who haven't, who would appreciate being able to be super depressed by a documentary. Let's go back to the article for a bit. Speaking in Zurich, Persiel traces the inspiration for the film to a walk in Portugal, where he now lives. He heard one frog calling out at a time of year when hundreds would usually be doing so in chorus. The reason? Intensive agriculture had drained all the water from the river nearby. I realized that this lonely voice will not receive an answer, so will not be able to procreate. That's pretty sad, actually. Modern agriculture is turning frogs into incels. We have to do better. He also realized that future generations would not know what they were missing, as they would not have experienced it in the first place, with damaging consequences for the fight to preserve biodiversity. The capacity for us to miss something is the capacity for us to care and do something, explains Persiel. As such, the film is largely about shifting baseline syndrome, a concept that has quickly gained traction in environmental circles since it was first coined in the 1990s. In essence, it describes how humans have a poor conception of how much of the natural world has been degraded by our actions because our baselines shift with every new generation. Which, I mean, yeah, that is very true. By setting his film in 2054, Persiel allows audiences an opportunity to confront directly what they and the next generation will lose and what they need to do to prevent it. It's gonna be tough, so tough though. It's really hard to convince people of a certain age, and I'm just gonna out, like, you know, baby boomers and people from the generation behind them, people older than baby boomers, excuse me. It's just really hard to convince them to give a shit, because they don't. They're all just like, oh, we'll all be dead, so it doesn't matter. And those are the people who vote the most. Those are the people whose political will and political power has the most traction. And that is essentially what we are left with. Super depressing. Not a big fan. The rest of this film... Oh, it's actually kind of a review of sorts, actually. As soon as I start seeing things like the future of 2054 is brilliantly realized, all the more so given that it was largely shot in camera and without visual effects. This is starting to go into review territory, and we don't like covering reviews in this live stream. Persiel admits that Everything Needs to Change is, in many ways, a devastating movie for audiences to watch. However, the third act is more hopeful in that it offers potential solutions that humans can and might take to address the extinction crisis. And they won't. Nobody cares. Welcome to Cinemateq, where we make you depressed on Monday mornings. What is clear, though, is Everything Needs to Change is cinema as activism. It is also, says Persiel, a labor of love. Perhaps we need more cinema as activism in the current day and age. So I definitely want to see this. If it premiered at Zurich, I assume... Oh, God, when will that even mean that it gets released to all of us? It may not. And that's kind of the shitty thing with a lot of international cinema, especially stuff that's on the lower, that's a bit lower when, oh, sorry, Everything Will Change. Sorry, Brent, yeah, you're right. I was probably misquoting, unless the article calls it a few different things. Yeah, Everything Will Change, and Everything Needs to Change. Ah, the article got it wrong a couple of times. See? They just need to hire us as editors. We can fix this stuff for them. But as I was saying, since this film is premiering at Zurich, which is not one of the larger film festivals in the world, I don't know what that means for its prospects as far as getting distribution, getting released in other parts of the world. We'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully it does. Hopefully the climate message behind it will make it get a bit more traction in global marketplaces, and we'll see a release of it soon. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that one. Although if you're already of the opinion that we're all fucked, I don't know what this documentary is going to do in order to change it. And just also to go back to Chad, when we were talking about the David Attenborough documentary, Brent put in there that it is David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet, that is super depressing. So if you want to be depressed, go watch that right now. After we're done here. That's the important thing to remember. Oh, excuse me. So, going on to a documentary that actually did get purchased, we have BEBA. And this article comes to us from Deadline, written by Anthony D'Alessandro. It came out on Friday, but because it was Neon that did the buy-in, I wanted to talk about it because Neon is super good at everything they do, and in my mind, they have surpassed A24 as the company that puts out the coolest shit. So Neon has acquired worldwide rights to BEBA, the debut film by the New York Afro-Latina artist Rebecca Hunt, that has recently made its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival, earning rave reviews. The 16mm feature of poetry and interview footage will debut in 2022. So they're not trying to get it out for an Oscar run, which is interesting. They must have a lot of faith in it, but they don't have Oscar faith in it. Which is strange, because there was, in the documentary sections at the Oscars last year, there was some experimental, like, poetic documentary type films that got nominated. So it seems that they could have push this if they felt like it could have done well at the Oscars, but apparently not. And it may just be too late in the year for this to happen, and they'll be pushing for like a 2022 campaign into the 2023 Oscars. But I digress. Hunt undertakes an unflinching exploration of her own identity in the coming-of-age documentary Cinemateq memoir. Reflecting on her childhood and adolescence in New York City as the daughter of a Dominican father and Venezuelan mother, she investigates the historical, societal, and generational trauma she's inherited and ponders how those ancient wounds have shaped her, while simultaneously considering the universal truths that connect us all as humans. Hunt searches for a way to forge her own creative path amid a landscape of intense racial and political unrest as an Afro-Latina artist hungry for knowledge and yearning for connection. So this is going to be a very personal film from the sounds of it. I can't really think of a good analogy or something that is analogous to a cinematic memoir that I have seen recently. So I don't really know what would be a good one. A good, another one that we could compare to this. Let me know in the chat if you can think of something. Hunt wrote and directed and produced with Sophia Geld, Oscar nominee Petra Costa, Elise Adriel Spiegel, Alessandra Orfino, Joy Brandt, and Inuka Becante Capiga serve as the executive producers. Apologies to everyone for destroying your names. And yeah, just talked a little bit more about Neon. So that's the whole story. And of course, as I said before, Neon to me is the new A24. And so anything that they buy and put out is automatically on my radar. Excuse me. And I will be happy to watch when it becomes available to do so. I typically don't see documentaries at film festivals. I tend to enjoy fiction films more, and documentaries are more things that I watch around Oscar season, specifically the films that are nominated, the documentaries that are nominated for Oscars. Maybe now that I'm like fully running a film channel, I should be a bit better about watching documentaries, especially ones that have artistic merit and are not just kind of explainers for things and topics that I already enjoy. Something like this, as an example. Like BEBA, I should clarify. So yeah, happy that this got picked up. Happy to watch it when it comes out next year. Keep it on your radars, everyone, because Neon does not do bad things. Try to find me a bad Neon film. In fact, let's try to find a bad Neon film right now. Titan. That's a good movie. But let's just see. Alley, I have not seen that. Year of Everlasting Storm. Saw that like last week. It's pretty good. Don't know if it's a film that I would recommend because it really just shows the breadth of different short films that you can make during a pandemic. This is The Year of Everlasting Storm is a combination of a number of, I think 7 or 8 short films, all of which were made during the pandemic, and only one of them, well, 2 of them really try to deal with the pandemic in terms of like what it's like to be isolated, what it's like to be alone. All of the other ones more deal with just what you can do during the pandemic, what kind of films you can make during a pandemic. And some of what goes on in some of these short films is pretty fascinating to watch. So yeah. And also Pig is probably one of my favorite films of the year, Memoria, saw that at TIFF, super good. Spencer, really looking forward to that coming out. Titan, already seen it, probably the film of the year for a lot of people. Flea, I've heard, is good. Killing of Two Lovers, I have no idea. Gunda, once again, no idea. Night of the King, saw that at TIFF last year. It's super good. Excuse me. Apollo 11 Quarantine. Is that kind of like a follow-up to the Apollo 11 documentary they released? Probably. Dear Comrades, no idea. But I assume it's good. In the Earth. Ooh, actually, I think this one was a little divisive. Maybe it's not as great as I was thinking. New Order. I have actually owned that, but I haven't watched it yet. Shirley's supposed to be good. Spaceship Earth is supposed to be good. The Painter and the Thief. I really want to check that out. She Dies Tomorrow is okay. But also Palm Springs and Possessor are dope. What I'm trying to say here is that if Neon put it out, it's probably pretty good because they've put out a lot of great stuff. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. There you go. That's all you need. And Monos is actually pretty cool too. Oh, and the small film called Parasite that you might have heard of. Oh yeah, Amazing Grace, the Aretha Franklin one. I'm just now realizing that I think my local theater, the Fox Theater, they just exclusively play Neon films for the most part. Because a lot of these I either saw there or I know are going to be available there, which makes, because I know that Pig, it was there, and I saw this at the Fox, and I think this is actually the Fox as well. So does that mean I'm going to be able to watch Spencer at the Fox? Because that makes me super happy. In any case, they're good. And we have Dory saying the New Order was amazing. That's good to hear, because I will be watching that. If it's a horror film, I'll be watching it this month, more than likely. But I'll have to double check. So now, dear cinephiles, I'm going to do one last check to see if there's any kind of important film news that we need to discuss right this second. Oh, my brain is breaking, everybody. I promise I will be more like myself tomorrow. So they got one, there's no new film news from what I can see, and there's one last article that I wanted to look at just because it's just funny. Just the headline was funny, and it made me laugh. So apparently, Clint Eastwood, you all know who Clint Eastwood is, has won a $6.1 million CBD lawsuit. CBD, if I'm remembering everything correctly, which I'm not right now, to be fair, but I think I'm remembering this correctly, is one of the active ingredients in marijuana. So let's get a little bit more in this article and find out what Clint Eastwood has to do with that grass. The Academy Award-winning director accused a Lithuanian company of falsely claiming that he had endorsed CBD products. This is coming from the New York Times, who we often do not have articles from here. And this is being written by Sarah Baer. Not to say the New York Times is not good at what they do. I have very little feeling about the New York Times in general. But they don't really cover films in the way that everyone else does. So this should be fun. The actor Clint Eastwood and Grappapada, the company that owns the rights to his likeness, were awarded $6.1 million on Friday in a lawsuit they had filed against a Lithuanian company that was accused of using Mr. Eastwood's image and likeness to make it appear as though he was endorsing their products. Last year, Mr. Eastwood filed 2 lawsuits in federal court in Los Angeles against 3 CBD manufacturers and marketers whose products were featured in an online article falsely claiming that he endorsed CBD products, as well as 10 online realtors who he accused of manipulating search results through meta tags, which is not actually... that's just how it works. It's called search optimization, bro. Like, that's just how the world is. And then this also just lets us know that CBD is cannabidiol, a non-intoxicating compound in the cannabis sativa plant. According to the first lawsuit, the online article contained a fake interview with an outlet meant to resemble the Today Show. It included a photo of Mr. Eastwood from an actual appearance on Today, as well as links to buy the items. Mr. Eastwood has no connection of any kind whatsoever to any CBD products and never gave such an interview, the court document said. The judge of United States District Court of the Central District of California entered a default judgment after a company. The company that published a fabricated interview with Mr. Eastwood failed to respond to a summons in March. Mr. Eastwood and Garapata were then awarded $6 million based on the company's unauthorized use of his name and likeness, along with about $95,000 in attorney's fees and a permanent injunction that blocks future use of his name and likeness. Those attorney's fees are insane to me. Like, that is so much money. And they didn't even show up. The people that they were suing didn't show up. And it's still $95,000 in attorney's fees. Double my salary at my last job. Well, more than double. No, less than double. About double in attorney's fees. And the other guys didn't even show up. I should have been a lawyer. In pursuing this case and obtaining this judgment, Mr. Eastwood has again demonstrated a willingness to confront wrongdoing and hold accountable those who try to illegally profit off his name, license, and goodwill, says Jordan Sussman, a lawyer of Mr. Eastwood, in a statement. I just became very worried that Mr. Eastwood will see this live stream one day and sue me in the exact same way. I really hope he doesn't, because this is a news show, in case anyone needed clarification on that. Please, Mr. Eastwood, don't sue me. This just goes in a bit more about Mr. Eastwood. And then the original complaint filed in July 2020 named as defendants the companies whose products were being advertised in the article. In February, Mr. Eastwood's lawyers filed an amended complaint against Mediatonus UAB, the company that owns the websites where the false stories appear. While the court agreed that Mr. Eastwood and Garapata were entitled to damages for the unauthorized use of his name and likeness, it declined to grant their full request, which also accounted for defamation claims. It requires additional context to understand what CBD products are and why a person like Clint Eastwood would not endorse a marijuana-based project, the judge wrote, adding that the language used was not libelous on its face. So he could have got more, but Clint Eastwood at 91 will just have to make do with $6 million. So there you have it. Clint Eastwood, winner of lawsuits. That is his name. That is his new name. And that, fellow cinephiles, brings me to the end of the film news. Just going to take one quick look to see if there's any new film news. Pretty sure we don't need to talk about how Reebok and Ghostbusters are creating shoes based on the Ghostbuster franchise. So I'm going to call that a day today. I apologize. I have not been at my best today. I am just very tired from this weekend, and I will use the rest of the day to take a little bit of rest for myself. Go to the grocery store. God damn, I need to get food in this place. And you can't see it. It's all out of frame, but probably should do a little bit of cleaning, if we're being honest. So I will say thank you, everyone, for joining in. It was, as always, it was wonderful hanging out with you and talking about the film news. Please make sure to like this live stream if you haven't already, and if you're coming to this a little bit late, leave a comment in the comment section below. Love to see that, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you know every time that I go live. But you're gonna know the next time I go live because it'll be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. because we do this 9 a.m. all the time, except for Friday. Programming note: I'm gonna be seeing the new James Bond movie at like 11:30 a.m. on Friday. So there will be no morning movie show on Friday. However, I will likely do a live stream later in the evening on Friday. So keep a lookout for that. Once again, hit that notification bell. You need that notification bell in your life. It's your friend, like I am your friend. Oof. Hit that hard. Ooh. Good sound though, right? Oof. I could be a wrestler. No, I could not. All right, everybody. Thank you again for hanging out. I will see you tomorrow morning. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, if you can.